Hello, I'm Beth. I'm a storyteller and a witch, and today I'm going to tell you a story. A story about a monster. And I've chosen a story about a monster because, well, this week it's Halloween. And Halloween is the time of year that monsters come out to play. Monsters like the Yeti monster, the Loch Ness monster, and strange creatures as well, like trolls and goblins and werewolves. They all come out. You might see them if you're silly enough to go out walking at night. Anyway, this story is all about a strange monster that lives up high in the Himalayan mountains. And I know about it because I found this tooth when I was travelling there. You know, witches go travelling about the world on their broomsticks. And I found this tooth. And the local people said it was either the tooth of a rare tiger or it was the tooth of the Nuang Guama. And then they told me this story. It's all about a woman who met the Nuang Guama, and this is what happened. It all started one morning when the woman was just in her house going about her normal business. She was chopping wood. Can you do that? She was mending her fences. She was gathering her vegetables. It was when she was gathering her vegetables that she heard a strange noise coming from the very top of the mountain, and it sounded a bit like this. She'd never heard anything like it before. She went to the edge of her fence and looked up the mountain, and then, to her horror, she saw coming down the mountain the most revolting, horrible creature she'd ever seen in her life before. It was covered in white fur. It was about as big as a bull. It had long, sharp teeth and red, glowing eyes. Well, the woman started to back away, but she was so frightened and shaking so much she could hardly move, and the creature was getting closer and closer, making this strange noise like this. She started to shout, "Don't come any closer! Go away! Leave me alone!" And then the creature spoke. "I am the terrible Nuang Guama, and tonight I'm going to eat you up." The woman stood back and gasped, and then the creature turned around and made its way back up the mountain, making that weird noise. The woman was beside herself. She started pacing around her garden and her house. What was she going to do? "The terrible Nuang Guama is known across the land. If only one of my friends could come to lend a hand." She was beside herself. But just then, actually, one of her friends was passing. It was a peddler, and he had a great big tray of useful things to sell. And he said, "What's this? The Nuang Guama's coming to eat you up?" "Yes, it is." "Well, I can help you. Take these needles, stick them in your door, and that way, when the Nuang Guama comes, it will try and break down your door, and it will prick its fingers on the needles, and maybe it will go away." "Oh, thank you," she said. She took the needles and stuck them in her door. "Now, when the Nuang Guama comes, it will try and break down the door, and it will prick its fingers on the needles. Maybe it will go away. But what if it doesn't?" You might know this bit by now. You can join in. "The terrible Nuang Guama is known across the land. If only one of my friends would come to lend a hand." Well, luckily, someone heard her singing. It was her friend, the farmer, and she was carrying a great big bucket of cow manure, which is a bit like cow poo. Well, it is cow poo, but the manure is what we use, the cow poo, we put onto people's gardens to make them grow even better. Well, this woman said, "What's this about the Nuang Guama coming to eat you up?" It's true. Well, take this cow manure, put it on your door. That way, when the Nuang Guama comes, it'll prick its fingers on the needles, it'll get cow manure in its hands, and maybe it'll go away. Thank you, said the woman. So she took the cow manure and she spread it all over the door like this. And of course she washed her hands then in her water trough. Now, when the Nuang Guama comes, it'll prick its fingers on the needles, it'll get cow manure on its hands, and maybe it will go away. But what if it doesn't? You know this bit. The terrible Nuang Guama is known across the land. If only one of my friends would come to lend a hand. Well, actually, just then, one of her friends was going past. It was a fisherwoman carrying a great big glass jar of eels, poisoned eels. Eels are a bit like snakes, but they swim in the water and they're actually fish. She said, "Oh, what's this I hear about the Nuang Guama? It's true, coming to eat me up. Well, take these poisoned eels, put them in your water trough, and that way when the Nuang Guama gets cow manure on its hands, it will go over to the water trough and try and wash its hands, and the poisoned eels will bite it." The woman said, "Thank you so much." She took the poisoned eels and she put them into the water trough. Now, so far, when the Nuang Guama comes, it will try and break down the door, it will prick its fingers on the needles, it will get cow manure in its hands, it will run over to the water trough and get bitten by the poisoned eels, and then maybe it will go away. But what if it doesn't? The terrible Nuang Guama is known across the land. If only one of my friends could come to lend a hand. Well, actually, at that point, one of her friends did happen to be passing. It was the egg seller. He had a basket full of eggs, and he said, "I just heard you talking about the Nuang Guama. What's going on?" "It's coming to eat me up." "Well, why don't you take these eggs, put them in your fireplace? That way, when the Nuang Guama gets bitten by the poisoned eels, it will run into your kitchen, try to soothe its fingers on the ashes in the fireplace, and the eggs will explode in its face." "That's brilliant," said the woman. So she put the eggs into the fireplace in the ashes. Right, can you remember this? When the Nuang Guama comes, it's going to prick its fingers on the needles, it's going to get cow manure on its hands, it'll run over to the water trough, get bitten by the poisoned eels, it'll then fall into the house, try and soothe its fingers on the ashes in the grate, and the eggs will explode in its face. And then maybe it will go away. But what if it doesn't? The terrible Nuang Guama is known across the land. If only one of my friends would come to lend a hand. Well, actually, one of her best friends happened to be passing. He was a metal grinder and he was carrying a massive grinding stone on his shoulder. He said, "What's this about the Nuang Guama coming to eat you up?" She said, "It's true." He said, "Take this grinding stone, put it over the top of your bed, and that way when the Nuang Guama has the eggs explode in its face, it'll fall about your bedroom, it will fall into your bed, the stone will fall on its head, boom, and that will be the end of it." "Brilliant," said the woman. She took the grinding stone, she put it on top of her bed. She said, "Right, now the trap is fully laid. When the Nuang Guama comes, it'll prick its fingers on the needles, it'll get cow manure in its hands, it will run over to the water trough and get bitten by the poisoned eels, it will go over to the fireplace, it will try and soothe its fingers in the ashes, and the eggs will explode in its face, and then it will fall around the room, bang into the bed, and the grindstone will fall on its head. Boom. And that will be the end of it. Oh, I really hope so. Well then, she gets into bed and waits for the Nuang Guama to come. Now, I don't know if you do this, but on days like Halloween, maybe when you're a bit scared, you might get into bed and cover your head with your blankets. That might make you feel a bit safer, and that's what she did. She lay in bed with her blankets over the top of her head. But then, as it started to get dark, she heard that noise coming down the mountain. She heard the Nuang get closer and closer to her house. It got right up to the door. It started sniffing and snuffling around the door. And then it tried to break the door down. Ah, yuck! Ah, yuck! It got its hands pricked on the needles. It got cow manure on its hands. Ah, yuck! It ran over to the water trough to wash its hands and got bitten by the poisoned eels. Ah, yuck! It ran into the kitchen to try and soothe its fingers on the ashes, and the eggs exploded in its face. Ah, yuck! It fell around the room and then bumped into her bed. Ah, and the grindstone fell on its head. Ah, yuck! And that was the end of it. Whew. The woman got out of her bed, went over to the Nuang, picked its big floppy feet off the floor, and then dragged it out the door and over to the edge of the cliff. And then she kicked it over the side. Whee! Boing, 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 splat. And that was the end of the Nuang. Well, I'm sure you can imagine. The next day the woman went out shopping and she got herself a very strong lock for her door and made sure that there was no chance of a Nuang ever breaking into her house ever again. And that's the end of my story about the Nuang. Well, I hope that you don't have any scary monsters to deal with on Halloween, but remember, if you do, always look to your friends to help you out in a time of trouble. All right, it's time to go now. Hope that you have a good Halloween. Bye-bye.